So today, we're diving into something pretty wild, a hidden link between an ancient storm god and, well, a revolutionary modern philosopher. It's a connection that really challenges how we think about morality and even life itself. Let's get into the fascinating world of Baal and Nietzsche. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. A life-giving deity from thousands of years ago and the guy who famously said God is dead? It seems like a pretty odd pairing, right? So, what in the world is the connection? That's the exact mystery we're going to unpack. So, on one hand, you've got Baal, the lord of the earth, this raw, powerful force of nature. And on the other, you have Nietzsche, who told us we need to look beyond simple good and evil and just embrace life in all its chaotic glory. It's this shared idea of affirmation that ties them together, and that's where our story really begins. Okay, to really get this, we have to go way back. We need to meet the original Baal. Long before he was seen as a demon or a false idol, he was basically the engine of life itself for the Canaanite people. You see, Baal had two main jobs, and both were absolutely crucial. As the storm god, he was in charge of the life-giving rains. As the fertility god, he's the reason the fields grew crops and the herds had young. To put it simply, for them, he was survival. What's so fascinating here is how their myths worked. Baal's big battles weren't about good versus evil. Not at all. His endless fight with Mot, the god of death, was their way of explaining the seasons. The brutal, scorching summer, that was Mot winning. But the life-giving autumn rains, that was Baal back in victory. It was a worldview that just accepted conflict and death as a necessary, natural part of life's rhythm. The Baal just captures his whole vibe perfectly, doesn't it? Raw power, untamed strength, and just overflowing fertility. This wasn't a god of quiet reflection. He was a god of vigorous, untamed life. But here's the thing. This isn't the Baal most of us have heard about. Right, because in another, far more famous story, this god of life gets a complete makeover. He becomes the poster boy for everything you're supposed to reject. All of a sudden, those symbols of fertility and natural power are recast as something demonic. And you have to ask yourself, why? Well, it's because a new story was being written, a story that would turn a revered god into a cautionary tale for a whole new moral order. So in the biblical narrative, Baal is no longer a nature god. He becomes a symbol for worldly temptation, that seductive promise of an immediate reward, of rain for your crops right now if you'll just turn your back on a higher, unseen faith. And this created a really powerful moral framework. You feel temptation, which leads to suffering, which leads to repentance, and then you get a little bit of peace right before the cycle starts all over again. This story establishes a very clear moral binary. There's a right way and a wrong way, a true God and a false one. Now remember this idea of a moral binary. Because centuries later, a philosopher comes along who wants to challenge that very moral framework. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche, and he wanted to basically dismantle the simple idea of good versus evil. Nietzsche's joyful wisdom isn't about ignoring pain or pretending things are great. It's about finding freedom and hope after you've gone through suffering, after your old beliefs have crumbled. It's a philosophy for a world where those old moral certainties are gone, a way to find value in life itself without needing some external rulebook to tell you it's okay. And right at the heart of this philosophy is one of his most famous and, frankly, most challenging ideas. Amor fati, the love of your fate. Now, this isn't just passive acceptance. It's not just gritting your teeth and dealing with it. It's an enthusiastic, powerful embrace of everything. The joy, the pain, the wins, the losses, seeing it all as necessary and even good. It's a radical yes to your life, exactly as it is. A direct challenge to that moral binary we were just talking about. So let's connect the dots. How does an ancient myth about the changing seasons link up with this really profound philosophical idea? And here it is. The original Baal myth was a kind of pre-moral affirmation. It accepted the brutal, beautiful cycle of life and death as just necessary. Nietzsche's Amor fati is the philosophical version of that same idea, an individual choosing to affirm their own life cycles, the good and the bad, as essential parts of who they are. You could almost say it's a call to return to that pre-moral worldview. You see, the biblical story of Baal created that good versus evil framework that Nietzsche's philosophy was rebelling against. He called for a return to a way of thinking that could see the whole picture, the struggle and the triumph, and say yes to all of it. So it leaves us with the final question.
By turning Baal into a villain, did we lose a more resilient, maybe even a more honest way of understanding the world? It makes you wonder. Perhaps the tools we need to navigate our complex lives today are actually hidden in the very stories we thought we'd outgrown.